Okay, let's dive in. We need to talk about something huge, a health issue affecting, well, billions globally. High blood pressure. You probably know it as hypertension. It often gets called the silent killer, and that's because, frankly, loads of people have no idea they're walking around with it. And the risks, they're really serious. We're looking at increased chances of heart attack, stroke, even links to dementia down the line. But, and this is important, there's good news too. It is possible to change course, and today we're focusing on, maybe surprisingly, the power of exercise.
Yes, and what's really interesting is this 2021 study.
Hmm.
It was in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine, and Science Alert picked up on it. And this wasn't just a small snapshot. They tracked over 5,000 people across 4 U.S. cities for 30 years, a really long-term view.
30 years, wow.
Right. So in this deep dive, we're not just going to talk about how much exercise might be needed.
Yeah.
The really crucial part is when in your life it seems to matter most for protecting your heart long term.
That's interesting because, the usual advice is just start young, keep going. But this sounds different. The study suggests maybe you don't want to peak too early. What does that actually mean for heart health?
It's a subtle but important point. The study observed that physical activity levels took a significant dip. They actually slumped among participants between the ages of 18 and 40.
Huh.
Across the board.
Pretty much. Men, women, both racial groups they looked at. And the critical finding was connecting that slump, that decrease in activity, directly to a rise in hypertension rates over the following decades.
Ah, okay, so there's a link.
A clear link. It really highlights a specific window, that young adult phase.
Right. And I think Kirsten Bibbins Domingo, she's an epidemiologist at UCSF, one of the authors, she mentioned this. She said something like, maintaining physical activity during young adulthood at higher levels than previously recommended may be particularly important for stopping hypertension before it starts. So when she says higher levels, what are
Yeah.
we talking about? How much higher? Good question. The study got quite specific there. They basically said achieving at least twice the current minimum adult physical activity guidelines may be more beneficial than simply meeting the minimum.
Twice the minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in practical terms, what they found beneficial was hitting 5 hours of moderate exercise a week during early adulthood.
5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's double the current baseline recommendation, isn't it?
Exactly. And crucially, this level of activity significantly lowered the hypertension risk, especially if people managed to keep up those habits until they were around 60.
Okay, 5 hours of moderate exercise. Let's just clarify that. We're not saying everyone needs to run marathons, right?
No, absolutely not.
Uh,
Moderate could be, brisk walking, cycling, maybe swimming,
Yeah.
even things like heavy gardening or dancing, anything that gets your heart rate up consistently.
Right. Got it. Still, 5 hours a week. I mean, think about young adulthood. That's often when life gets incredibly hectic. College, starting a career, maybe kids. It feels like a tough ask. Did the study acknowledge those real-world challenges?
Oh, definitely. Jason Nagata, he's the lead author and an expert in young adult medicine at UCSF. He pointed this out specifically. He said, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, that opportunities for activity tend to shrink as young adults transition. College, work, parenting, leisure time just gets squeezed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he also noted that nearly half of their participants in young adulthood had suboptimal levels of activity. So it's a widespread issue. It's not easy.
Right. It's one thing to know the recommendation, another to actually fit it in. But beyond those individual struggles, the study also brought something else to light, something more systemic and pretty sobering, actually. These were the racial disparities they found in health outcomes, right?
Yes, the data showed some stark differences. For instance, around age 40, physical activity levels kind of plateaued for white men and women in the study. But for black participants, activity levels continued to decline past that age.
Continue to decline.
And the impact on hypertension rates was significant. By age 45, black women in the study had higher rates of hypertension than white men. White women generally had the lowest rates through midlife.
And later on, by age 60.
By age 60, the numbers were really striking. Between 80 and 90% of the black men and women in the study had developed hypertension.
80 to 90%. Wow.
Okay, compare that to just under 70% for white men and around half, maybe slightly less, for white women. Big differences.
So how did the researchers explain these gaps? It can't just be individual exercise choices, surely.
No, and they were clear about that. They attributed these diverging paths to a multitude of social and economic factors. Now, this particular study didn't measure all those factors directly, though they did note high school education level. But Jason Nagata, the lead author, again, he offered some context. He suggested that while, for example, black male youth might be highly involved in sports, Things like socioeconomic factors, the environments people live in, work demands, family responsibilities, all these can create barriers to staying active throughout adulthood. So it's complex. These are the study's observations, and those are the kinds of potential explanations the researchers pointed towards.
Okay, so pulling this all together, the core message seems to be the incredible long-term value of staying consistently active. And maybe needing more activity during young adulthood than we previously thought to really fend off that silent killer hypertension. It's like investing early, but needing a bigger investment.
Precisely. It's about that sustained effort, particularly during those transitional young adult years. But it also leaves us with a really important question, doesn't it? Especially considering those challenges and disparities the study highlighted. If we know it's hard to maintain exercise through life's changes, and if social and economic factors play such a big role, well, what kind of support needs to be there? What societal changes or community-level systems could actually help everyone get and sustain the activity they need to protect their heart health for the long haul?
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. What does that support look like?
Exactly. Something for all of us to consider.